As always, you guys are so generous with your applause, and I appreciate it. All right, we are back for more. Today, we are discussing finding the value of the discriminant. You're like, what the heck is the discriminant? The discriminant is a way to tell how many solutions you have to a quadratic equation. So again, let's remember that y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. That's our standard form for a quadratic equation. When we're solving it, we want that y equal to 0. So 0 equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And that'll be important when we actually get to use the quadratic formula. But for today, we're just trying to do the discriminant. So if you look, you have the entire quadratic formula, which is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And the plus or minus part means that, and we'll get to this again tomorrow, but it means that you do the formula twice. So you do negative b plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And then you do x equals negative b minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so that's what, like that plus or minus can get confusing because you're like, well, how do I know which one to do? We do both. Because remember, if you're looking at parabolas, sometimes they have two solutions, one there and one there, right? So this would be one of the solutions and that would be the other. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So what we're looking at today, like I said, is the discriminant. And that is part of the quadratic formula. And it's the part that's under the square root symbol. So this right here. So the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. Now, what you need to do, what we're going to do on this sheet right here, is we're just going to practice plugging in some numbers, okay? So you want to plug in the numbers given, so a equals 1, b equals 4, c equals 3, and simplify until you're down to one number. Sorry, I got so loud because I was yelling at my dog. So in this, we have 4 is b, so 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 3. Okay, I'm sorry, you can hear my dog whining in the background. So 4 squared is 16. 4 times 1 is 4, times 3 is 12. So 16 minus 12 will give you 4. So now I'm down to one number, so that's good. Try it again with the discriminant. So b squared minus 4ac. Well, b is 6. So 6 squared minus 4. That 4, again, that's always there. That's part of the formula. So don't get confused if you have like a different 4 in there somewhere. Like this is always 4. It's always b squared minus 4 times a times c. So plug in a, which is negative 2, and c, which is 1. And you got 6 squared, which is 36. And then you have negative 4 times negative 2, which is positive 8 times 1. So 36 plus 8, which will give you 44, okay? And then you would do, like this isn't as important right this second, but we'll do it anyway, and I might come back to it when we do our lesson on quadratic formula. So this, number 1 and 2 are just a discriminant. This is the discriminant and then the square root. So we're getting a little bit closer to the whole formula because remember that was under a square root. So this is the square root of b squared, so 0 squared minus 4 times 1, which is a, times negative 1, which is c. So you have the square root, 0 squared is 0, and then 4 times 1 times negative 1 is negative 4, but you have a minus here, so this is 0 plus 4. So you have the square root of 4, which is 2. And then it's actually plus or minus 2, if you remember that. And then if we go down to this one, now we're going to do the entire quadratic formula. So we have negative b, so negative 7, plus, so normally we do plus or minus, right? But we're just going to do the plus side of it right now. So plus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, so 7 squared, by the way, I'm going to put that in parentheses, sorry, minus 4 times 1 times 12 over 2 times a, which is 1. So now you're like, holy smokes, this is crazy to simplify. It is, but you'll have to do this in our next lesson. So you have negative 7 plus, let's do this. So we have 7 squared, which is 49. And then you have minus 4 times 1 times 12. 4 times 1 is 4 times 12 is 48 over 2 times 1, which is 2. So I have negative 7 plus 49 minus 48 is 1. So square root of 1 over 2. And then negative 7, the square root of 1, of course, is 1 over 2. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6 over 2 is negative 3. So this will do, like I said, in a couple of days. And obviously, you can use your calculator for that too. All right, time to move on to the discriminant and what it's used for and how to make good use of it. All right, so if we're looking at this, and we've seen this before, how many solutions do we have? Remember, solutions to quadratic functions are where the graph crosses the x-axis, okay? Because remember, we have like several different names for solutions. We have roots, we have zeros, we have x-intercepts, right? So all of those, so solutions, x-intercepts, zeros, and roots are all the same thing, and they're all asking where does a graph cross the x-axis? So in this one, in A, it crosses or hits the x-axis just right there. So there's one solution in this one. And B, it crosses here and here. So we have 2 solutions. And of course, remember, your solutions are whatever point those are, right? So they're always going to be like a number, comma, 0, because you're not going anywhere up or down. In this instance, if I can count, I think it's 1, 2. So this would be 0. I'm sorry, 2, 0, and so there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 9, 0, right? So their solutions would be those coordinate points. And then in C, where does it cross the x-axis? Well, that would be nowhere. So there's no solution. But remember, that means there's no real solution. And when we get to quadratic formula, you'll see, or actually today when we talk about discriminant, we'll talk about real solutions and what makes something real and not real. All right, so we're going to use our discriminant. And it says the discriminant tells you how many solutions are in a quadratic function. Okay, well, where do the a, b, and c come from? As we know, it's just ax squared plus bx plus c, right? Okay, so here's the deal. If you do the discriminant and you find that it is positive, so you get a positive number, then you have 2 real solutions. So your graph would look like this, where it crosses twice, okay? If you do b squared minus 4ac and you get 0 as your answer, then you have 1 real solution, so it crosses once. If you do b squared minus 4ac and you get a negative number, so anything less than 0, there are no real solutions. The reason is because, remember, this whole thing, this b squared minus 4ac comes from the quadratic formula. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. b squared minus 4ac is under a radical or under a square root. And as we've talked about before, you can't take the square root of a negative number. So if you have a square root of negative number, remember that was narn. Narn, right? So in order to have a solution or a real solution, you have to have a real number. And when you do the square root of a negative number, it is not a real number. So that's why if you get a negative here, you would have no real solutions, because the whole point of doing the discriminant is to then put it under that radical or that square root symbol when you do the quadratic formula. We already know that there won't be any solutions if you get a negative number, because you can't, whatever b is, you can't add or subtract like a non-real number from it. All right, it'll make a little bit more sense when we get there. Okay, so an example here. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 7 equals 0, and I want to find the discriminant. Well, let's see. A is 1. B is -6. So remember to take that sign with it. C is 7. Okay. So we're going to plug this in. So -6 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times 7. Okay. So -6 squared, remember anytime you square a negative number, it will become positive. Again, that's why it's so important that you put this in parentheses. So -6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 1 is 4 times 7 is 28. So 36 minus 28 gives you 8. And 8 is a positive number, which means there will be 2 solutions. All right, next one. X squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. A equals, again, 1. B equals -6. And C equals 9. So I'm going to plug this in again. So I have, for B squared, I'll have -6 squared minus 4 times 1, which is A, times C, which is 9. So -6 squared, again, is 36. Minus 4 times 1 is 4, times 9 is 36. So 36 minus 36 is 0. And I will have one solution, or one real solution. Now going down here, my A in x squared minus 6x plus 11 equals 0. A is 1. B is -6. And it's just a coincidence. I mean, I kind of set it up that way. For B to always be -6, but certainly, like, as we know, B isn't -6 always in quadratic functions. It just happens to be in these three. And then C is 11. So when you go through and you do, again, -6 squared, because B is -6, minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 11. So I have 36 minus 4 times 1 is 4 times 11 is 44. So 36 minus 44 is going to give me -8. And again, if I were to go in and do the square root of -8, I would have none. So I have no real solution here. And this this idea that positive numbers yield 2 solutions, 0 as a discriminant yields 1 solution, and negative is no real solutions. Again, it'll make a lot more sense when we do the quadratic formula, but for now, you know, this is really what you need to really understand, is how you're gonna, like, when you get a positive number, how many solutions is that? When you get a negative number, how many solutions is that, etc. Okay, now the last page of this is just practicing. So let me see if I can get this over a little bit. There we go. So all you're going to do here is what we did on the other side. So I have a problem, and I'm going to list A, B, and C. I'm going to do the discriminant, and I'm going to talk about the number of solutions it has. And remember, if you get a positive number, that means there are 2 solutions. If you do the discriminant and you get 0 as your answer, that is 1 solution. If you do the discriminant and you get a negative number as your example, that is no real solutions. Okay? All right, so x squared minus 5x plus 7 equals 0. A is 1. B is -5. C is 7. So the discriminant here, remember, it's b squared minus 4ac. And I would tell you, I would write that down every time you do it until you have it memorized. It's just going to help you a little bit. That way you don't have to keep looking to see what it is. So in for b goes -5 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 7. So I'm going to have 5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times 1 is 4, times 7 is 28. So 25 minus 28 is going to give me -3. And I look and see, okay, well, I have a negative number. That means I have no real solutions. So number of solutions is 0. And again, I should put real solutions up here. All right. 2x squared plus 12x minus 3 equals 0. A is 2. B B is 12, C is -3. Remember, that's A, B, C right there. So B squared minus 4AC. In for B goes 12 minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is -3. So you got to be careful here too that you're putting, like, that C is negative. So make sure you put that in parentheses too, because that'll make this whole second part positive, because you have two negative signs there. All right, 12 squared is 144. And then 4 times 2 is 8. Times 3 is 24. Two negatives make it positive. So I have 144 plus 24, which is going to give me 168. And that is a positive number. So I go up and I see, okay, well, positive numbers means what? That means 2 solutions. All right. Now, x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. A is 1. B is -8. C is 16. Again, B squared minus 4AC. So in for B goes -8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. -8 squared is positive 64. Minus 4 times 1 is 4, times 16 is also 64. 64 minus 64 is 0. So if my answer is 0, that means I have 1 solution. And the reason why you do this, again, is because you want it's really to see how many times you have to do the quadratic formula. So if I get this negative number in this top example, and I know it's not going to have any real solutions, I don't have to do the quadratic formula because I know I'm not going to get an actual answer. In this second one, so I got a positive number and there are 2 solutions, I know that that means I'm going to have to do the quadratic formula twice because I'm looking for 2 solutions. And then in this one, when I got 0 and I have 1 solution, I know that when I go to do the quadratic formula, I'll only have to do it once. So, like, because the positive and the negative would be the same. All right. Next example here, 3x squared plus 6x minus 1. A is 3. B is 6. C is -1. So I have 6. Oh, sorry, I didn't write it down. I didn't follow my own advice. B squared minus 4AC. So 6 squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is -1. Again, you got to watch your signs on this stuff. 6 squared is 36. 4 times 3 is 12, times -1 is -12. So minus -12 would be positive 12. 36 plus 12 is 48. That's a positive number. So that means I have 2 solutions. And then I have x squared minus x plus 8 equals 0. So I have A is 1, B is -1, C is 8. So I have B squared minus 4AC, and that will be -1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8. -1 squared is 1. Minus 4 times 1 is 4, times 8 is 32. 1 minus 32 will give me -31, which is a negative number. So, of course, there are no solutions there. All right. So I realized right now I just did all of your homework for you, too. So there you go. You have your notes and your homework. But, yeah, so that is the discriminant. And we will use that, again, like I said, to use the quadratic formula. So if there's additional practice you want with this, there is a CUDA sheet, I believe, on next lesson that gives you the option. Like, it's a quadratic formula CUDA sheet, but if you want, you can take that and just go through and do the discriminant on all those problems. You certainly don't have to. But, all right, thank you for watching. We will talk soon.